As all of you know, Pat is a painter and writer whose art has been exhibited at the André Emmerich Gallery and the Eric Firestone Gallery, and who is currently represented by James Fuentes. Her writing has been featured in many publications, including most recently Tablet and the new Criterion. And she is, of course, the author of what we're here to celebrate today, The Brightening Glance. Brightening Glance was published by University of Iowa Press this month. And as many of you know, the book has received widespread acclaim. Louis Menand, contributor to New Yorker, called it a stylish and entertaining and above all honest memoir of a painter's life and time. Lily Analik, contributing editor to Vanity Fair, called it brilliant, energetic, and brave. And Rich Cohen, contributing editor to Rolling Stone, described it as, quote, filled with characters, incident, and the excitement of the city at night. We'll have copies of the book for sale today after the talk, so if you haven't gotten yours, you're in luck. You'll be able to do so. And Pat has generously agreed to sign copies as well, so I encourage you not to miss out. And Pat is also the subject of a stunning exhibition that is currently on view at James Fuentes Gallery downtown, Color Next to Color. The exhibition is on view until November 1st. If you haven't already seen it, also I would encourage you to make your way down there. It really is a triumph, and congratulations, Pat, on that as well. So tonight, we'll talk about the show, we'll talk about your paintings, but I'd like to focus first on Brightening Glance. And I want to start by saying congratulations. It really is outstanding on so many levels. Just out of curiosity, has anyone read the book, read excerpts? Fantastic. So some of you know this will be familiar to you, the many strengths of Pat, not only as a painter, but as a writer. I was riveted by the book. It is a work of literature. It is a work of criticism. It is a work of history and also a gripping work of art world sociology. It's studied with vividly drawn characters from Andy Warhol to Clement Greenberg to Carl Andre to Patti Smith, and equally vivid renderings of New York City life during the 60s and 70s and beyond, when the contemporary art world that we know so well now was just forming, and when Pat was a pivotal figure in that process of formation. It also has a lot of practical advice for artists. So people here at the League who are working themselves in studios, the book will have a special added value for you in that regard. It is also, I must say, really stunningly written. I don't know how you've achieved both to be an accomplished painter in one medium and then such an accomplished stylist as a writer as well. That's one of the things that we'll talk about. First, I think I just wanted to ask, how did you decide to write the book, and how did it come to you? Did it come to you all at once, or did it come to you in pieces?
No, it came to me in pieces over many years.
Right.
I didn't exactly decide to write a book. I just started writing I started writing excerpts, and there were certain things I wanted to remember. Certainly, the section on Greenberg, I felt that I had to write down notes that I had taken over the years. I just needed to write them down. So then suddenly it was like, this is a lot of stuff. Maybe I sent it out to some places, nothing happened. So I started compiling it, and then one of my students actually at the Art Students League, who had worked at the New Yorker, read some of it, and he said, oh, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
So that built up, and then as we were just talking about Louis Menand, I met Louis Menand, this is quite a long answer.
Fantastic.
I met Louis Menand, or I came to know him because of Greenberg's writing, and we corresponded about Greenberg and his writing. Of course, Menand had never met him, but knew all his writing very, very critically and very brilliantly.
Of course.
And so I said to Menand, I wrote something on Greenberg because I had this long chapter, but it was part of the book. And he said, oh, yeah, really? And I said, yeah, it's part of a book I wrote. And he said, well, just send me the book.
Yeah. And then if I remember correctly, I think you said that he read it in one sitting.
He what?
He read the book in one sitting.
Yeah, he told me that he read it in one sitting. And
Doesn't surprise me.
A week later, I was talking with a friend of his who became my, whatever you call it. I'm just blanking on the
Literary
word.
agent.
Literary agent.
Yeah. You say that you just felt like you had to start writing. Was it a compulsion? What was that?
Well, and I've always been very, very interested in writing. I love writing, and I also love literature. And one of my main influences in my life is Marcel Proust. And Marcel Proust said that what happens to you is just negatives until you develop them by writing about them. So that's really what the impetus was.
Right. I also, for those of you who haven't read the book, there's a brilliant line in the introduction where I think you describe it as a process of giving form to your life through writing, through recalling, which is a Proustian gesture.
Yes, it's exactly how Proust felt, and I felt that I had to do that. And so I guess I waited quite a while to do it, but I did do it.
Well, we'll walk through some of those great moments and vignettes. The first one I wonder if we could talk about is your time at Hunter College with Tony Smith.
Right.
That struck me as maybe the first and most impactful teacher that you had when you yourself were a student.
Right.
Can you tell us a little bit about him, your impressions of him, and what impact he had on you at that time? This is the late 60s.
Well, of course, who you study with in painting is hugely important. And before I had Tony Smith at Hunter, I had a teacher called Ray Parker, who you might or might not know about. And he was a lovely person, and he was actually a good painter, but I didn't connect with him, and I left his class. And then I just took the other person who was available, Tony Smith, and soon as I spoke with him, I just knew that this was the exact right person I needed to be talking to. He was a very brilliant man, and he had been a very close friend of Pollock. And of course, I follow Pollock. My work has a great deal to do with Pollock. So he was a tremendous resource, and also he had a great eye, and helped me to develop as a painter.
You describe him as brilliant, and as you have a great aside when you say that brilliant people make new parts of the world visible to you. They kind of show you, they bring to your attention a whole register of experiences that you otherwise would have been oblivious to.
Right.
Do you remember anything that Tony Smith pointed out, or the way that he changed how you saw things?
His whole approach and his whole demeanor, everything about him was new. I had never at that moment met anyone like him. He had been in rooms I had never been in but wanted to be. He had known people I didn't know but wanted to be. He came to class from Mark's studio. He was talking to Barney constantly.
Mark Rothko, Barnett Newman.
So this was an incredible privilege, and there he was talking to me.
Right.
Wait. I forgot the other part. He was taking me very seriously.
Right.
And I wasn't used to it. I was 24, and I just was stunned when this guy was very serious about my work. I couldn't get over it.
Do you remember what your work was like at the time?
It was my work initially at that time was not too good, quite frankly.
Good enough for Tony.
Unfortunately, I've saved it.
We'll see some later. I'm just kidding. Another great thing about that Tony Smith episode is it's one of the first moments where you reveal yourself as a writer to be such an accomplished portraitist. You're an abstract painter, but as a writer, you really have a gift for the telling detail, the finely drawn portrait. You describe Smith as lordly and slightly ominous, and you have a fantastic passage when you're recalling, I think, late afternoon, where you're leaving the studio, and you say, and this is just to give you all a flavor of Pat's facility as a writer, and we walked outside along the sidewalk, crowds and rush hour cars, horns and smells, through the slanting light and shadows of Lexington Avenue, feeling the city cool into winter along our arms and on our faces and hands. Tony raised his voice to be heard above the soliloquy of traffic. And there's this lovely sense of New York, of your experience with Tony, of time passing, and of him filling the space around you, becoming this large figure that he would remain throughout your life. I also wanted to ask, you stayed at Hunter for 4 years, not 2 years. Was this all because of Smith?
No, it was only a one-year program.
It was so even more so.
I stayed totally to work with him.
Right.
Yeah, I just thought that this was a great thing that had happened to me, and as somebody who had gone to art school and who had been in different situations with painting teachers, I knew that this experience with him was something else. He was a total professional. He was functioning in a professional capacity. He knew everyone. You know, it was couldn't have been better. That's how I'd put it.
And then you experience the titanic shift in his life, where he goes from a kind of unknown figure who you say you're lucky enough to be a student of, to becoming a nationally celebrated artist.
Yeah.
And you're there front row when that
right.
happens.
That was tremendously exciting. You know, we students were just like, wow, what happened? And he was on the cover of Time magazine.
Right.
So, you know, within a month, he was really well known. I mean, nobody ever went that quickly to that height. And Greenberg told me that. And,
right.
You know, Tony wasn't shaken by it at all. He acted exactly the same. That was the most interesting thing about him, really. And I've said this to my students, is that he was just a very solid person who talked to you the way I'm talking to you right now, no matter what happened to him.
Uh-huh.
He wasn't, you know, dropping you or carried away by what fame he was suddenly having. He was just the same.
There was and that's not the only time that you've witnessed in the book. You witnessed these moments where figures either achieve prominence or lose prominence. You're constantly tracking whether it's your own or other characters moving up and down.
That's
and kind of and one of the things that struck me again and again was how honest you are about success and what it brings, which is in many occasions not the kind of applause that you would think or encouragement that you would think. In many cases, it brings envy. It brings a kind of anger and hostility. And you were achieving a success while you were a student at Hunter. And there's a moment where you recall a professor saying, "Not me, Pat, but other people at the school are angry at you for what? Eclipsing them?"
Well, I was stunned. I was just absolutely stunned. It just never occurred to me that Vincent Longo was going to be angry at me because I was at Emmerich Gallery. I mean, it's just mind-boggling.
Let's say a word about Emmerich and how important. First of all, do you remember when you became represented by Emmerich, and then maybe give us a sense of who André Emmerich was and what the gallery was at the time. This is, I think you started being represented in 68, 69?
69, the fall of 69.
Can you walk us through how that happened?
I'm sorry, what?
Can you walk us through how that happened, how you became...
Well, sure.
Yeah.
I wanted to be at Emmerich Gallery, and I went to the gallery with my slides, and I saw Mr. Emmerich, and I showed them my slides, which wasn't that easy. And he said to the person who worked for him, Robert Miller, who then had his own gallery, "Bob, I want you to go and see her paintings." And Bob loved the paintings, and then André came, and within a year, I was at Emmerich Gallery.
Just like that?
It was stunning.
Yeah.
I had the paintings there.
Right. So you did this. So the body of work that you show in 1970 was done in 68?
69 and 70.
Uh-huh.
And it wasn't a bad move he made, because he sold 71 paintings in 1 year of mine and told me that I broke a record for Emmerich Gallery.
Well done. Congratulations.
So it was the whole thing was very positive. It was a little bit, to put it mildly, it was somewhat overwhelming for me. And a lot to take in, let's put it that way, and destabilizing.
Yeah, destabilizing personally and also socially.
Yeah, socially, and certainly in terms of the marriage I happened to be in, it was disastrous. Uh-huh. So that type of success has negative ramifications.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a competitive spirit both in the art world and outside of the art world.
Yes, exactly.
Competition is also a big subject of another great chapter, maybe my personal favorite, about Max's Kansas City. The way that you present Max's Kansas City is completely engrossing, a little dangerous, and very vivid. You write about your time there that on those nights when you're at Max's Kansas City, you had, quote, the unimpeachable feeling of being in the right place at the right time. Can you just set the stage a little bit about what was so great about Max's Kansas City when you were there?
Yeah, well, it was a thrilling chapter to write, and I'm thrilled that it exists, because a lot of people don't know what Max's Kansas City was, and I did this thing, it was only a month ago or something, and I turned to the crowd and I said, and I could do it here, but I won't. I said, how many of you were at Max's, or do you know what I'm talking about? And in that crowd, no one had been. So, well, that's nice that some people have. So it was just a hangout. And it was funny because I'm not the kind of person who hangs out.
Yeah.
So it was a hangout.
For people who don't hang out.
On a very high level.
Yeah.
It was a high level hangout, and it felt right. It felt like everything that was happening in New York was happening right there.
In that bar.
Yeah, in that bar, that night.
Yeah.
You were in the right place. It was perfect.
And it's you, it's John Chamberlain, it's Larry Poons, it's Carl Andre. It's
all
Andy
these
Warhol.
groups that hate each other
Right.
are all there in Max's, continuing the hatred.
Right. It's the collision of the abstract painters, the pop artists, the conceptual artists, sitting within 15 square feet and just loathing one another.
And none of the groups ever go out of their level. None of the groups ever break through. You never ever said hello to Carl Andre.
Right, on principle.
Never. He was right there.
And then you recall a fight that actually does break out. This simmering tension does eventually explode. Do you remember who the fight was between?
Well, I don't. I think the Warhol people were involved.
Yeah.
I think the person that I was friendly with was Dan Christensen. And then the guy I was dating, Ken Greenleaf. And there were, and as you said, Poons and Reginato, some of these people who teach here or have taught here. And I guess it was inevitable that something like that was going to happen.
Right.
It didn't last for very long, and then Mickey got up and stopped the whole thing. Mickey is the owner. Of course, the whole place had nothing whatever to do with Kansas City.
Yeah, it wasn't Max. It wasn't Kansas City.
It was a total fake.
Total fraud.
They didn't even serve food from Kansas.
No, it was steak and lobster.
Yeah,
bizarre.
they only had 2 dishes, steak and lobster.
Yeah. You have another great line talking about the sort of the competitive sort of angst that was underneath everything, and because you're constantly referring to how artists are competing for scarce resources, and you write, the amount of money and attention is limited. That anger, that sense of flat injustice in the appreciation of others is one of the world's first signs that you are an artist. Which I love. That kind of, there's a wry humor to all of that, which I thought was fantastic. Do you remember competition sharpening art making at that time? Was there a sense that competition was, could actually...
It couldn't have gotten any sharper.
Okay, you were already sharp.
It was sharp to begin with.
Yeah.
Being in the art world at that time, I don't feel like that now. And I'm not sure exactly why, possibly about my age, the art scene now. It was just dog eat dog and killer. It was everyone, and especially for me, people were annoyed that a woman was having success. And I remember, this is a terrible thing to remember, quite frankly. Dan Christensen said to me, you sold more paintings in 1 year than I sold in 5. And he didn't say that positively.
Right.
So, there was a sense that, particularly if you were a woman, you shouldn't have been there to begin with, and you were taking money away from these men.
Right.
Who
felt that they deserved it. It was
that's
rightfully
right.
theirs.
Why did I deserve it? They didn't. I wasn't a friend of theirs. I didn't come up in their crowd, and I'm an imposter.
Right.
It had that little bit of that quality to it.
Another part of the Max's chapter is this transition from abstraction being the sort of dominant mode to pop, and how you sort of felt the ground underneath you shifting, and how much of almost an affront you felt at that change. You said that the work that you and your painting colleagues were doing, you felt that it was difficult and serious, and you felt that the pop art that Warhol and his superstars were making was not that. Do you remember?
Well, that was a stunning period to live through, because we might have had this infighting that I'm describing, and jealousies and so on, but we were making art, we were in our studios, we were painting on the floor, whatever it was we were doing, we were using canvas. And now suddenly these pop artists come along, and who are they? And they're doing these pinup girls, and it's like, are they serious with this? Of course, Warhol was the greatest sort of joke to us in the mid-'70s, but we didn't take him that seriously, which we made a mistake.
He was deadly serious.
Yeah, he was dead serious. We were thinking, he's like a jerk, he's like silly, I was invited to the factory. I said no. It wasn't interesting. And so then they're pulling out, and we're falling behind. I'm still in a state of shock.
Why did you say no? You just had no interest, or it was?
I had 2 children. I wasn't going to risk my life to go to Warhol's studio.
And speaking of risking life being in the factory, you recall him opening his shirt and showing off his scar, which I thought was shocking.
He had just been shot a few months before. I mean, seriously, I probably would have gone.
Yeah.
But not after that.
Yeah. There's also, as I said, there are great vignettes about art. There's great vignettes about your practice, which we'll get to. There's also these great sort of New York landscapes and New York scenes. One is the loft scene, which you were of that generation that converted Soho into a kind of arena for art making.
Yeah.
You say that you pioneered the neighborhood. Can you say a little bit about what that was like and how important? I don't think people understand how important the physical space, you call it the raw space of a loft, was to the kinds of art that you could make.
Well, I'd say that I had to do it. In other words, there was no question I had to have a loft. And the person I was married to, for example, wasn't interested in that. The marriage ended. I had to have the loft because I had to have a big space, and I had to be in the thick of this new world that was happening. At that age, I was at the right age for that, and Soho was tremendously exciting and fun, and just sort of an inner group, which I compared maybe to being in Florence, like what Florence might have been like, because everyone was on the street. People were, you were dropping into a gallery.
It was a scene.
It was what?
It was a real scene.
Yeah, it was a serious scene on a high level. That's
right.
how not that it was fussy or anything, but and then the neighborhood was cobbly, cobblestone, and my children didn't care for it that much, quite frankly. Although they say they do now.
Right. When you say on a high level, that's a term that you've used. Seriousness on a high level. When we get to Greenberg, one of the things that he says to you in his response to slides that you sent him is that you're doing high art. What do you mean by that? Because those are values that I think either are taken for granted or have been abandoned. But rigor, seriousness, and doing things on a high level, that just seems to be a recurring theme in your practice, in the practice of other artists you admire. Is it the same for everybody? Is it one metric, or what is that a marker of for you? Doing something?
That's a very good question. I hope I'm up to it. Well, certainly it comes from Greenberg, but I didn't learn it from Greenberg. I just had the point of view. The point of view was, I'm in this. It's very serious. I'm aiming for the highest thing. I'm connecting with Rothko, Pollock, Newman, and before that, Cezanne. In other words, I'm trying to assimilate this. I'm trying to connect with my position as the next generation. And it was a very serious involvement, and it had very high stakes. And the stakes were that you were in the greatest city in the world with the greatest art scene in the world, and you were going to be in it.
And you better measure up.
Yeah.
You better make work that measures up.
It was very scary. It was terrifying, well, as it still is.
Right.
It's still terrifying.
Do you still see yourself as when you're in the studio and you're considering a painting and whether it will meet your standards or not, are you still thinking of that same group? Are you thinking about Rothko? Are you thinking about Newman?
No, not so much. I'm just thinking about how my work is lining up with what I did before.
When did that shift happen?
Well, I think it shifted in the last 30 years or something, 20 years. I had more of a sense of what I had done, and I wanted to be adding to it. I wanted not to do anything that would be a mistake for the work. The work was sort of there to some extent. It's a nice feeling, actually.
Yeah, congratulations.
Thank you.
And we'll get to some of that when we look at the work. Another thing that I was struck by, and this is again kind of almost a practical point of consideration for artists at other stages in their careers. You remarked that kind of in passing that the work you're making for the 1970 Emmerich show and the work you made for the 1972 Emmerich show, the second show, differed, and it was a problem. And then you have this, you give this sort of aside to students. Rule of thumb, talking about mediums, when you've had a huge success with one medium or style, don't switch. Your artist or your audience has just got to know where to meet you, and you're already gone.
Yeah.
Which actually bears a little bit on your note about having a body of work that you are your own work that you're trying to live into. That can also be considered a kind of style. Do you think much about style, or how do you think about style? And it's sort of like presenting rules for you, or kind of like an outline of what is admissible and not admissible? Do you ever chafe at having a style?
Certainly I had some awareness of that, and I would say that being a contemporary abstract painter is a very, very difficult thing, and perhaps more difficult than I understood at the time. And the second, it's not just what you paint, it's how you move through, and how, changing the work was not as good an idea as I thought. And it wasn't even as good a body of work as what I had done before, but I felt certain pressure on me to keep producing, and there was this attitude in New York, which I might have misread, about what's the next show, what's the next thing, what are you doing next? Instead of keep going with what you're doing, maybe you could go further with what you're doing. So it was hard to manipulate through all of that. That's how I would say it. Right. I made a lot of mistakes.
But I look at what's great about the show, and we'll get to it, is it covers, several decades in your career, and yet there is this tremendous energy and consistency from painting to painting.
Thank you.
Which I think is you're to be commended about. I want to be sure we get to another one of the major figures, which is Clement Greenberg. If people don't know, I can't believe that people wouldn't know, but Greenberg really was the 20th century's sort of paradigm art critic in America. I think he defined not only what abstraction was at its highest levels, but also what criticism was at its highest levels in this country. And you met Greenberg several times. You met him, he came by your show at Emmerich, and I think asked you if you wanted help hanging it, and you said no. Then you meet him in the 70s when he's giving...
I wasn't being snotty, I just didn't get it.
You didn't need the help. Then you meet him in 71 when he's giving a series of lectures at Bennington, but you only really come to get to know him in the 80s.
That's right.
And you recount that encounter. I think you're walking toward the Met, and you cross, and then you say hello.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what that meeting was like and where the relationship went from there?
Well, it just happens at that particular time, I was in a very, very low period. The early 80s, forgetting my own work, the early 80s was a terrible period for art, for the kind of art I do. It was suddenly everything from the 70s, which had been about abstraction, color, painting, changed, and it had all this figurative work and work like Schnabel and Sally, which to me was vulgar and disgusting, and also to Greenberg. But I didn't know that. I didn't know that right at that moment. So suddenly we were in a landscape. It's like, what? What happened? Mm-hmm. So everything changed very, very, very quickly. And so we just happened to meet in front of the Met. And he said, how you doing? We knew each other, but not well. And he said, the great words, send me your slides. So I, looked at my slides. They didn't look that good to me. After he said that, I sent them. And then he sent me back a packet, the packet with the slides and a note. I probably still have the note. And he said, well, it's clear you're doing high art. And so, whew.
Yeah, you made the cut.
And so then then we did a panel together. I don't know if that's in the book or not.
I don't think so.
It isn't. So I was asked by NYU if I would set up a panel, and I said, yeah, I think I could do that. And I said, I think I could ask Clement Greenberg, and he went for it. So we had a panel of 5 people, and Emmerich, Greenberg, Darby Bannard, Ken Moffat, and in other words, all people from that group.
Irving Sandler?
What?
Was Irving
no,
Sandler?
That wasn't
Okay.
Irving Sandler. He would have liked to come. So we had the event, and it was packed. It was really interesting because it was 84, and the truth is, at that point, our group was so low that there was nothing. Nothing was happening, but everyone came to this event. It was like a morgue situation or a funeral.
an elegy for abstract painting,
that's right,
for formalism.
Right.
Yeah.
And anyhow, I don't know what that was.
It was a table.
That was just a very exciting moment. It was very successful, that the event was. And then we kept being friendly through the 80s and early 90s, and then unfortunately he died. But he had a huge influence on me. And
he would come to your apartment and talk about your work.
Right.
Critique your work.
Yeah.
Do you remember what he would say, what comments he would make?
Yeah, he'd say, the first time he came, he'd say, you'd put a painting up, you'd say, nah, next. You'd put a painting, next one up, nah, next. And finally, at the 7th painting, he said, oh, that's really good. But then he got more involved. He was certainly involved with the work. And the last work he saw of mine, which has never been shown, could be shown here, were the Black Diamonds.
Uh-huh.
And then one of them is called In Memoriam CG. Mm-hmm. So I don't know what he would think of the work I'm doing now. I really don't. But he had a fantastic eye, and he stood for something that wasn't going to change. In other words, he knew who he was, and he had incredible integrity. So if he said he didn't like something, he definitely meant it, and if he said he liked something, he definitely meant it.
And that phrase, the thing with Greenberg that you write really beautifully about, and we've spoken about a couple times, is Greenberg had taste. But taste does not, in this context, it does not mean mere preference. There was a philosophy of taste. Taste was a matter of principle and deep conviction, and it was linked to the person's whole being. It wasn't, I feel like this, I like this today, I don't like it tomorrow. Taste was a rich and powerful concept, and linked to philosophical concerns. Is a Kantian notion where his subjective taste, he felt like you should have it. You should agree with his judgment of a painting.
He didn't think I should agree with his subjective taste.
But the judgment of a painting, he thought it applied.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't his mere preference.
No.
I think that's a distinction that's lost, and a kind of criticism that isn't very widespread now. That's why underlies that comment that you make at the end of that chapter. He's the only person I ever knew who stood for something.
Well, he did. He was indomitable, and he wasn't going to say anything he didn't mean, and he didn't care what you thought. I've never met anyone else like that.
Another important character, and in some ways struck me as almost the sort of pendant or opposite of Greenberg in your life, was Dick Bellamy, famed art dealer, representative of the Green Gallery in the early 60s, which is on 57th Street here. Can you say a few words about Richard Bellamy and what made him such a great dealer and maybe such an interesting person to know?
Well, he was enigmatic. He was... He had an incredible charisma. He was, wildly charming, and he also could be low-key and relaxed, and he was a true intellectual also. I mean, he was reading the highest poetry at all times, not showy. He was going to concerts 4 or 5 times a week. Yeah, I never knew anyone like that, and unassuming at the same time. I didn't share all his art tastes.
Right, because he was a famous early proponent of pop.
No.
Was that your...
Not exactly. Rauschenberg.
Sure.
What's that?
I think that's your phone.
Oh, I just
Don't worry about it. And also conceptualism, minimalism. Green Gallery really did it all. And Larry Poons.
What was the last one?
Larry Poons.
Well,
Famously
Poons, no, he wasn't.
I think he showed a green in 63 or 64.
Wait, hold on. No, I'm just thinking back. I'm just thinking back on exactly. Well, I'll tell you the truth. I had to keep quiet quite a bit in the relationship. No, I just remembered. I really liked him. He was a marvelous person, and I admired him. I didn't just like him, I admired him. So it's not like, I admired him. And I guess you could say that what he proved to me was that somebody could like something I didn't like, and I could still really admire and respect them. And the one I'm thinking of, and I feel guilty saying it even now, is Marc de Suvero.
He loved de Suvero, and you thought...
He loved de Suvero. I hated de Suvero.
Yeah.
I thought de Suvero's work was clumsy. Mm-hmm. I thought it had no finesse. If you compare de Suvero with David Smith, there's just no comparison. But I had to sort of nod.
Just because out of respect for Dick's...
Well, he just really liked de Suvero, and, he was very committed to the work, so we had a difference of opinion.
Right. There's a ripple of kind of content in the book that has to do with what it's like to live as an artist and to live with art. And sometimes those passages are sort of transcendent. You write about, at one point, as soon as you admit that you are an artist and you start making work, the prospect of joining that current of that tradition of art shows up for you. And you say, if you produce good enough work, you can join the current of that stream of great sort of cultural production. But there are other moments where being an artist can feel very brutal and taxing. There's another moment where you're here at the League, I think. You've just met a student who you discover was, I think, the ex-lover of an artist, who you can name or not name. And then you write, a lot of aging painters' former lovers wander the city, women and men often disoriented by creativity. It's a hard thing touching art. People who can turn an object, their talent, to acclaim into tangible money. How do you go back to ordinary life after seeing that? So there are figures throughout the book who have joined that current and ascended, and there are people who've been thrown off and beached, as it were.
Absolutely.
And that must be, your life is filled with both kinds of person.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing. To get into that thing is huge, and then what you see in there is sometimes shocking, and then there's always the possibility that you'll be out very soon.
You feel that yourself.
Yes.
As you can be in the stream, and you can be tossed off, dragged under, tossed off.
Yeah, and that's always possible.
Yeah.
And that could be possible after death as well.
Right.
I mean, so it's a very precarious, that's how you'd say it. It's extremely precarious. And that's the art world. You have to have a very strong stomach for it. Yeah, it's a gutsy thing to do, for anyone to do, to take yourself that seriously, to want to be part of that.
On that same subject, and this is another moment where it goes, which is also what I love about the book, you have moments of sort of these thematic statements that become very concrete, because that anxiety is the key sort of emotional tone of a chapter where you are anticipating a studio visit. And you write, you're talking about having set up a visit with a prominent dealer. Setting up this visit took 5 emails, my triple drafted answers to his tossed off questions. He is scheduled to arrive this February morning between 10:30 and 10:45. Or did we finalize it? At 10:50, I start to wonder. I double check our email chain. A studio visit, because it's an assessment of quality, is like being injected with a big hypodermic of doubt. Did I actually receive confirmation, or was there some delusional misread on my part? That's one of the things that's so disarming about the book, is these moments of confession, where you tell people really what it's like to actually live this very precarious life.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, fantastic.
I happen to love anything that's funny. So that's very funny,
All
so
throughout.
That's why I like it, right. But when you're when you need to have a gallery and you're talking with different dealers and the thing is so loaded in favor of the gallery and you're just wanting to get into that gallery, that's a very difficult and funny and also funny situation, especially some of the people who you're dealing with.
Yeah. I think that chapter ends with you're anticipating, this dealer is going to say if he's going to buy something or not. And he says, yeah, I'm going to go buy 3 or 4 things this afternoon. And then and then leaves. And I think comes back and takes you out for lunch or something.
No, that was somebody
else. As we wrap up this portion of the talk, and then we'll look at some of the paintings that are downtown, I wanted to highlight one other chapter called Alone in a Room, which some of you may have seen excerpted. But this is a chapter where I think you said you didn't even think that this would be part of the book. It focuses on your working practice. It sort of recounts you coming into the studio. You had been working the night before painting, and then the chapter begins with you coming back into the studio the next morning, and the work that you had been making was turned to the wall. You turn that painting that's maybe finished, maybe in process, you turn it over and set it up and look at it, and you're not impressed. It's that moment of standing back and looking and assessing what you've done. It's almost like you're confused by how you could have thought that something that was so so achieved and so fully realized that you could, again, have been so deluded. And you say that that delusion is important. Without it, you're lost.
Yeah.
But it can also be a real liability.
Yeah. Well, it's all about taste. You're just alone there in your studio day in, day out, and you're just making judgments, and you don't know if you're right. And even from a day-to-day basis, you can get all carried away. And then you walk in the next morning, you think, oh my God, this isn't even good. Like, what was I thinking? You're dealing with yourself all the time.
Right, and that moment of stepping back and looking, it did bring me back to Greenberg and judgment. Mm-hmm. Constantly, you're judging other people's work, constantly judging your own work, trying to have the nerve and the resolve to not shrink from that, to be objective or to be rigorous with your own sort of self-critique, and then also looking at the paintings. I did want to ask you, do you have a sense of what percentage of paintings? Is it 2/3? Is it half? Make the cut?
Everyone asks me that question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's half or less. John is right there. What is it, John? What did he say? More than half.
More than half make the cut?
No. More than half don't make the cut.
Got it. Yeah, that's what I would have thought.
No, more than half don't make the cut. So if you're not tough on yourself, you just can't do this. Mm-hmm. So I'm really I have a very high bar, and if I don't like something, I just get rid of it. Occasionally I'll work on it again, but the most important thing in my practice is not to be deluded.
That's a perfect way, I think, to end the discussion of the book and turn to the paintings. So this is what you see when you enter the show Color Next to Color at the James Fuentes Gallery downtown. And there are 2 works that you see, of course. One is a stunning self-portrait from '58, and the other is an equally stunning work from 1971, Winter. Just because it's the first thing that you see, maybe we can say a few words about the self-portrait. When I saw this, it struck me as it's an early work, but it's also very confident. It's almost a statement of artistic intent, a declaration of intent. Do you remember where you were sort of psychologically when you made this painting?
Well, I'm fascinated by what you say. I was just looking in the mirror, trying to make the best picture that I could. That's who I was at that time. I certainly always had a lot of confidence. So maybe you're picking up on that.
But you're presenting yourself as an artist. It is, and there's no shrinking at all in that fact. I mean, where this is at...
Oh, it's in the Brooklyn Museum.
Yeah, it's at the Brooklyn Museum in a studio. There's an easel there. There are the lockers there, and there's no. I'll turn so you can see it.
Yeah, that's good.
There's no embarrassment. There's no sheepishness. There's nothing but, like I say, a sort of intent to live a life as an artist. That's what I see in that painting.
Well, I'm sure that's there, but believe me, that's not what I was thinking.
And then the next work that you see, if you look down that hallway, is Winter. This is, when I see this in person, and you can see it, it changes a little bit when you walk around, the slow burn of color. You think of yourself as a colorist. Is that right?
That's my main thing.
Right. And then in a work like this, the colors are so volatile. There's a muted quality because of the tone, the sort of low register, but also there's like a kind of, it's almost like there's an ember in the painting that makes it feel very present tense. Is this something that when you see Winter from '71, what do you see?
I think it's terrific. Emmerich called it a glow. He said I had a glow, something about a glow. I think it's a very good painting I did. I don't do paintings that good all the time. That's all I can say. I don't know exactly how I did it, and I did it only one shot, and it came out. It's a miracle, I would call it.
There's another thing, there are a couple of sort of formal aspects that I'll bring up that you can say are there or not there, you can credit or not credit. One of the things that I'm interested in is I see this as being sort of suspended in a moment of composition because you have the three evident bands of color.
Yeah.
And then you have a fourth form, which is them together, which when you look at the painting, and it's obviously much more acute in person, you can feel that fourth form sort of coming into existence as you look at it. It's almost like the compositional process is suspended in a moment, in sort of the instant that it's occurring when you're standing there looking at the painting. That's, I think, why I think that it has this present tense quality, this fourth form, which is...
For the person who's making it, it's a completely different experience. I'm just standing there, the canvas is on the floor, I'm making something up, I see the form evolving, I go with it, I'm sort of in a dialogue with the painting, and it came out. It's one of the most successful paintings I did, period. I believe that. It's a great painting, and it's amazing I still have it. But I didn't know when I walked in there that day that I was going to do this painting. I didn't even have the idea in my mind.
Is this, when you say that it came out, is that something that you realize in that moment when you stand back and look?
Yeah, well, it's what people have said. Some people have said this. Is one person said about writing. She said, I only wrote it down to see what was on my mind. I don't have an idea that I'm going to do that. It just comes up, and I try to go with it. So it's not exploration is a corny word. It's something that I'm getting a kick out of while I'm doing it. Like, wow, that's what you're doing?
That's fabulous. And do you, I also wanted to turn to, this is the opposite side of the room, but a work that, so we go from 1971 to 2025. I would say that this came out too.
Yeah, this came out.
Yeah. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was the different kinds of marks in your painting. Just for anybody who hasn't studied with you, who's not a studio assistant, can you tell us the different techniques that you use to produce the kinds of marks that you get? I
don't have any techniques.
What do you use? Do you use a brush? Do you use...
I use a sponge, but I have no techniques. I'm just putting the paint on, and as I said, sometimes it works out. It has a lot to do with my personality at that moment. In retrospect, I can see that. So I happened to be in a very, very good mood. I just came back from a show in Los Angeles. I had a dream, and the dream painting is right next to it. And there was a different response that I was having. You just don't know what's going to work out and what's not, that's all.
This is, will come up in the next slide as well. Do you make a distinction between marks that are applied sort of with the sponge, with your hand sort of on the canvas, and these marks on the either side, the sort of splatter marks?
I definitely do, yes.
Yeah, because they seem like they're completely different registers.
Well, the splashes go back to my paintings in 1969, when I was very consciously trying to do a painting that had Rothko and Pollock in it. And the splashes are the Pollock, obviously. And the colors merging are the Rothko.
Those are two good role models. The other thing that I'm struck by here is how much space around the central composition you've left. And I know that cropping is important.
Of course, the cropping is essential to the painting, and the cropping is where the taste comes in. Very, very conscious. So the painting itself is it's not unconscious. The painting itself is free association and using myself as a tool. And then the cropping is very consciously deciding how to work with that thing I just made.
Right.
And I gave it a wide margin here. I could have gone closer. I worked on it a lot back and forth, and that's what I came up with.
I asked you this a couple weeks ago. I'm going to push on it a little bit again. Do those different parts of the creative process, the part that involves actually putting paint on canvas and the part that involves judging in order to crop, stepping back and looking, are they different parts of your sort of personality or makeup? Do you think about those two parts of the process differently? Do you identify with one part more or differently than the other?
I don't think of them differently, but they obviously take different parts of myself, because when I'm first making the painting, I'm trying to connect with the paint, with the color, to create something magical. That's step one. And half of them don't work out, at least. And then, okay, I have one, and I'd say the cropping is easier.
Okay. Do you think that Greenberg was a cropper? He cropped all the Morris Louis paintings.
Yes, completely.
Yeah, cropping is judgment.
Yeah.
Right.
He did a really good job on those.
Pretty good job. He also named a lot of those paintings, and he named one of your paintings.
Yes.
Would you tell everybody?
Oh yeah, well no, that was a painting that I had, is that in the book? Josephine, he named a painting of mine. I don't even know where the painting is. He named it Josephine, and he said, well, that's not the first painting I named. And I said, oh, and he said, no, I named Pollock's painting Lavender Mist.
Right. I'll leave that comment as it stands. Another thing that I noticed about this work, Emanate, which is something that recurs often, is your use of pencil. You can see it more clearly in other paintings, but are you using pencil to plot out where you will spend most of your time painting, or what is the role of those lines?
Well, there are two reasons I'm using the painting. There's two reasons I'm using the pencil. One is I know it looks good.
Okay.
I got that from Matisse. I just like to put a little pencil in there. It's part of the painting. And the second is that sometimes I'll just try to get like a feel for the curve, like the curve didn't go right, because I'm doing the curve freehand. I just know how to do that curve, and it always comes out. It's straight also, and sometimes it veers off. So I'll pencil it in and maybe try to fix it a little bit.
The pencil always struck me as your paintings are very sensual, but they're also very intellectual. And the pencil seems to acknowledge the intellectual aspect, as does the cropping. And so it's interesting to hear you say that you think it looks good and it's it's meant to be there.
Let's put it this way: I'll put a pencil line in, as soon as I possibly can, if it's necessary.
Yeah.
Well, I admired so much how Matisse used pencil. And that's part of a throwback to Matisse.
That's actually also something else that comes up in the book a couple times. Your interest in, and you don't have to say anything more about this, but your interest in the impersonal. I think people tend to associate abstract painting with a kind of confessional, expressive mode of painting associated with Harold Rosenberg as opposed to Clement Greenberg. But there are a couple times when you endorse the universal and the impersonal. What does impersonality mean to you as a painter?
Well, it means objective. It's not about, what I'm feeling or thinking. I'm trying to make the best possible painting I can on that day, given everything I know, who I am, what my materials are, and building on what I did before.
It also puts the book in an interesting relationship to the paintings because the book is full of personal...
Yeah, that's more fun.
Yeah, the book is a riot, but it's very personal. It's full of these confessional episodes. But, and this is to your credit as a painter and a writer, at no point was I tempted to read what you recount in the book into the paintings. The paintings have a completely different life. A sort of a less achieved book would function as kind of a key to the paintings.
Right.
This is Pat feeling sad. This is Pat feeling this way. But they have completely different, they operate in completely different realms and are both sort of independently interesting.
Thank you for noticing that.
This is just to give a sense of how important cropping is.
Yeah.
It completely alters and is integral to the compositional process. Here's another work. Do you want to say anything about touring and that series?
Well, these are that's the earliest paintings I did once I left Hunter. The paintings I did at Hunter, incidentally, weren't too good. I forgot to mention that. No, I mean, Smith was great. Maybe that was just all I could do. I think that really I felt that I had to be I noticed that I had to be around 27 or 28 before I actually could really do something very good. And this is the first painting I did when I left Hunter, and I did it on my own. It's a kind of a wild thing. I got interested in logarithmic progressions. I could never tell you what it is right now, and I don't know how I learned the math to do it. As I said, I was good at math, and there was a tone in the art world I picked up on about repetition and modular units, and this was my interpretation of it. And I did 3 of them. 2 of them are in the show. They've never been shown before. And after I did that, I started to do the more flamboyant paintings. So it almost seemed like I had to pay my dues by that.
When you see those paintings now, do they feel like they were done by another person?
No.
They feel very close
no.
still?
No, I know. I remember very vividly painting it. Paintings are like looking in the mirror, and also paintings are very autobiographical in the sense, not like Pat is feeling sad, but is that when you see a painting, as the person who did it, you remember the experience of painting it. I do anyhow.
And that's all evident in each work that you see at Fuentes, for instance?
Well, very often, let's put it that way.
You can also see, I just want to draw everyone's attention to Winter and how, unlike the earlier reproduction, the warmth of that upper register really comes through.
Yeah, thank you.
Again, you have to go in person if you haven't seen them. And then the last work that I wanted to talk about a little bit was Dream, which you already brought up. This, of all the works there, this always struck me as the most technically precise, mainly in the handling of the edges, both on either side of the bands, but also between them. And I know that in the book you write about, and you brought him up already, revering Pollock, especially how he handled edges. And it came, in the book you say it came as a disappointment to learn that he achieved that effect through a fan brush. You thought there was more.
There's Rothko.
Rothko, that's what I meant, sorry, Rothko. That you thought that Rothko's edges were so remarkable, and when you learned that he achieved it through a fan brush, you thought there was more to it. But here edges seem to be a preoccupation in a painting like this.
Totally. All abstract painting is about edges, because there's very little there. How 2 colors meet is hugely important, and the painting falls or succeeds in part by how the edges are handled, and it's not that easy to do. It's luck. There's a certain element of luck also. The edges on the side are tremendously difficult and evocative, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
I think that's a great note to end this part of the talk on. Would you entertain a few questions? Okay.